Here. This is the Nowhere market update. This is Thursday. It's one day late. I've been postponing a lot for the past week because of some logistics, but we're here. We're going to get started with this. This is going to be mainly just a technical video. I don't think I'm going to go through any themes for today, as it's later in the week. We've had a lot of stuff to cover anyway. With the red week, we had CPI today, which didn't really seem to even matter. The price action is basically the same as it's always been, and I've mentioned that before, that these events are pretty much non-events. So, but we do have a lot to cover with that. I might cover some news maybe. I'm not into the SBF stuff either, but I might cover that in a little bit. But honestly, just gonna take it to the charts, and that's kind of what Nowhere market updates are supposed to be. More of a um, detailed look at a lot of these charts. Some of these I have not looked at on the weekly, so I might cover those. It's going to also be more of an altcoin based analysis, but I know the altcoins have been kind of decrepit lately, so we're just going to look into that, look into the cycles, look into some of the more macro aspects of crypto, and so yeah, just that's just going to be how it is for today. Also, I've been getting a growing interest in stocks. So if you guys are interested in that, just let me know. Because I think I did some polls in my Discord. I haven't done any for Twitter, X, or whatever. But it seems like I have a 2-to-1 ratio of people that want stocks. So if you want that, I can add that in. It's something I'm actually have more experience in than crypto, but I don't typically advertise it. So if you want to see some of that, just let me know in the comments. Anyway, no preliminaries for today. It's almost the weekend. Let's have fun with this and let's get started. I think I'm looking at a couple things first. I want to look at the total market cap, and I also want to look at the Bitcoin dominance chart as well. Kind of give us a little bit of context into the rest of the video. And I'll try to make it short, I promise. And so, really, for the past, I mean, honestly, ever since February, the crypto market cap has kind of been choppy, even down. I mean, down from the highs from April. So really, for the past 6 months, been kind of on the downtrend, even 7 months. And so, with that being said, it does complicate a little bit. Now, if you look here, this looks very different than the Bitcoin chart, because the Bitcoin chart looks pretty much up for the most part, but the total market cap is pretty much choppy for now. So that it's also a sign that the market overall is a little bit weaker. The dominance chart for Bitcoin will also show that as well. So that isn't really something we have to focus on. Overall, big drop down relative to the week. We still have a few days left, but I've been saying that for a couple days now. The week is almost over. Now, overall with this, it just shows that there's a good sign of just a lack of interest in the market. So actually, I'm going to get rid of this and do like a fib marker, probably right here. And I think I'm just going to get rid of this as well. So kind of we're hovering on the line here from this previous order block. So far, so good as far as the structure is concerned. The behavior in the structure, however, is a little bit different. We had a big uptrend here, slow down, massive impulse, slow down, or slow downward. Then we accelerated that, and then we had another pump up, but then we had a faster acceleration. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing short, like we have all the pumps that we have relatively seen have been very quick. Now over time, these pumps, there's a big one, medium one, shorter one, and on the drawdowns, it has been slow, medium, and then relatively quickly. Now, in all three of those cases, we have held the low marker, so there's something to say of that. But overall, it is a sign that it's getting weaker. Now, I don't care to do technical analysis on the crypto market cap, but if I do, I would mark this out right here. I would add another marker out right here, and you kind of got more of a wedge. Some would say triangle. To me, it looks a little more wedgy in its presence. And so this would be the hold I think that we would need to see for the market cap. Now, again, this is the market cap. It could change. There's a lot of variables, and that's why I don't focus on that. That's why I don't like to focus on indexes as well. If you guys seen some of my my very early videos, I'm not into indexes. That's why I'm not into the S&P 500. I think it's okay to look at But if I'm looking at an individual stock like Nvidia, I'm going to look at Nvidia. I'm not going to look at the index. And so, just not a big fan of indexes in general. And I think overall, it is a net negative for the crypto space for the most part. I think it's good for more companies and other investors, but not so for the average person. I don't trade indexes. Even the stock market, I don't trade indexes. I trade individual stocks. No mutual funds, even nothing like that. So, and I've been pretty successful with it. I've had pretty good. Some of my yearly gains have actually been better than crypto. So anyway, different story. With this, I see the kind of the wedge in play. You have the bullish consolidation, very wide consolidation, and so that's pretty good. But overall, we kind of saw that right here when we had this kind of this area right here, not the downtrend, but just this order block. So doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go up, but doesn't it does seem a little more of a hopium aspect, especially with the failure of the RSI. So overall, not too bad. Could be better. I think there is a lot of reasonable fear in the markets, but I still think a lot of factors, a lot of the main foundational things are still holding up. We're still, you know, Bitcoin is up significantly for the year, and I think that needs to be a consolation because a lot of you guys just trade day to day, honestly, and I don't really trade day to day. I mean, I do, but the main part of my money gets used in high time frame, gets used in high spot trading where I just sit on it for 6 months, even 12 months, you know, and I do swing trading, of course, but right now is not a good condition to swing trade. And so that's the thing. A lot of you guys are getting tired of trading, and the reason is because you are trying to deal with the worst environments possible when you just need to let the environment change and come to you. Okay, it's just like some of you guys are trying to plant plants during the wintertime, and it's basically the same thing. Like I got 4 seasons where I live at right here, and right now is pretty much the beginning of the fall season when the leaves are changing colors. It's a beautiful time right now over here, and it would be really stupid of me to plant a tree right now knowing that it's going to die in probably 2 weeks. Like apple season is over. We get a lot of really good fruit seasons, apple, peach. We had strawberries earlier this year. It would be really dumb of me to plant a strawberry plant, for example, because it's not going to make it. And so that's what some of you guys are trying to do. You guys are trying to plant a fruitful tree when we're in the midst of a winter, basically. I mean, we're not necessarily in the midst of a winter, but we're not exactly in springtime yet as far as the market is concerned. So that's just a little analogy for you. All right, so that's the total market cap, keeping that simple. Going on to the Bitcoin dominance chart next. All right, so here is the Bitcoin dominance chart. I don't want to spend too much time on this either. A few things I want to note. This red line right here, the straight one, is basically the trend line. It's the historic trend line for all the entire price action, really. I mean, even upwards to the creation of Bitcoin itself, we have not crossed this line except for this area where we close under it, and the marker is where we hit close. And so I think maybe the line chart, yeah, the line chart will make it look better in that regard. So what I want to see here is as we approach this, I'm curious, are we going to get a break of this or are we going to push downward? And so there's a few things at hand. I've got a few theories. For one, it could break, and that's not my main theory, but it could break. But my main theory is that it could reject around this line, and then that it could push downward, and we could go into an alt season. Now, I don't necessarily hold fast to that. I'm not one of those people that I make you and force you to watch hours of content and say this is what's going to happen. If it doesn't, then something's bad. It can't be me that's wrong. The market's bad or whatever. Like I'm not one of those people. There are people out there that unfortunately I did respect at one point, and it's unfortunate to see some of those people take a strange take. Now, I know this is also a strange take, but it's not one I'm taking super seriously. I just want to bring it to people's attention. And so the first theory would be that we go above here, we touch this line, that would set up a divergence, and then we'd head downward. Interestingly, we do have kind of a consolidation pattern coming up here. I want to check this here. This is looking pretty fluid here. And keep in mind, this is on the weekly time frame, so this could take another 3 weeks to pan out. I still think this could happen, and it could easily happen. And so it won't take much for that to happen either, just a couple of percentage points. The market's kind of working more in Bitcoin's favor for the past day or so, but overall we'll see how that plays out. It's been on a very good dominant streak for really the past week, so we might get a couple weeks downward and go forward with that. So that would also set up a divergence on the RSI and the AO, and would probably end up with a bullish cross, which would end up a bearish consolidation on that as well. So a lot of those things would be panning out, but they haven't happened, and we need to keep that in mind. Another thing is the 200 EMA on there, kind of riding on that. Generally speaking, we don't have to stay around that area. Like generally speaking, any cross above that has been a favorable opportunity to stay away from Bitcoin. And so I mean, again, we're talking about the Bitcoin dominance chart, so there are a lot of semantics. There's a lot of subjectivity to this, and you need to keep that in mind. Also, the tops here tend to indicate like where altcoins seasons tend to go. Earlier in 2017, and you got December of 2020. So, a few different factors. I just think it's pretty cool overall. I'm not too concerned about if it does or if it doesn't. If it breaks, the whole theory goes to bust. Whatever. So overall, I think it's pretty good idea. Let me know what you think about that. I'm not really going to spend too much time on that. Maybe I'll cover a couple minutes worth of Bitcoin pairs, and if this ends up happening, I'll cover more pairs. But overall, just a little fun theory. So, all right, I'm gonna do. Actually, I think I'll cover a couple Bitcoin pairs. Ethereum and Solana in particular, and maybe Binance, and then we'll just go to the regular markets. All right, so first one up is the ETH BTC chart on the weekly, and we can kind of see right here we're approaching this zone. I mapped this out, I think maybe a month ago, thinking that we would go down here and maybe target the mid about 55.21. We are targeting the 200 EMA on this on the weekly, but we have broken it. It'd be interesting to see if we reclaim that. I don't think it holds any significance based on this choppy block right here. Just seems kind of irrelevant overall, but I do like the flip on this. And so that 55 marker, 55, basically 0555 probably is what I'm looking at. So overall, looks interesting. Not exactly exciting or tradable. The market, it's one of these things like you don't want to trade the Bitcoin market pairs anymore. You used to be able to make a lot of money, and that's the thing. A lot of people think that they can just make a lot of money like a lot of people did before, but the problem is it is harder to make money. That's one reason why I was not a big fan of stable coins. Overall is because yes, there is less risk, but now everybody puts all their money into stable coins, and now there's less profits for everybody else. And so people used to make a lot of money just following Bitcoin pairs. And so they would follow Bitcoin pair. When it was time to get out, they switched to Bitcoin instead, and then Bitcoin would go up, and it was very easy. Now it's not as easy as it. I mean, it wasn't easy either, but it is more difficult to get those 10x, 20x, 30x. It's still possible, of course, but you got to be a little more creative and sometimes even shady, or time the market properly. So, anyway, overall, that's ETH BTC. Nothing I really care about too much just yet. There's no real setup other than maybe a bounce, but we need to wait for that bounce first. So Solana BTC is next. Something I was wanting to look at too. We have a rising strength here overall, honestly, for the entirety of this year. And so I think that's worth its weight in gold for this. We had a bearish cross here, but it's pretty low. So that could be setting up a a bullish consolidation. We very well could get like a rounded bottom here. It's a very big one. Again, it's a little subjective. We did low go below the RSI here on the 50, so that's also unfortunate. I'm gonna go to the daily. See if I can see something here. Your key was probably that divergence. And see, that's another thing. A lot of these coins, like people are not watching Bitcoin pairs anymore. I'm not even. And I used to watch them a lot, a lot. And so we can see here we had the divergence, and even if you claimed above this line, you know, Solana is up 50% versus Bitcoin over the year. And that's one reason I was starting to get into Solana more versus Bitcoin. Well, one, I've already got a big Bitcoin bag. But if you would have been paying attention to Solana and buying into that, your Bitcoin value would have doubled. And that's what I'm concerned about. I think the Bitcoin charts do need to have more limelight. And maybe I'll do a Bitcoin chart segment eventually, but overall, that's a good way to make Bitcoin really fast. Like there's not enough people focused on making more Bitcoin. They are, but they're not. Like they try to do it by buying USD value or buying an altcoin with USD value and then transferring it over, and that's not necessarily the case. You do want to do that, but you also want to look at the Bitcoin chart in order to do that. So I can trade Sol I can trade Solana on the USD markets while also looking at this Bitcoin market. So if I get a buy signal here, I want to buy in USD value and then sell it. Let's just say I sell it there. Hindsight obviously is the best trading TA, right? But if I did that, I would have made the 50%, and then I wouldn't have 50% more USD necessarily. I might. I don't know what the chart looks like on the USD value compared to here, but I would have 50% more Bitcoin value. And so that's the thing. Eventually, you want to get more Bitcoin value. And so overall, this doesn't look that bad. I like the build up on this, getting kind of a channel here that is also bouncing on the 200 EMA, and this looks like a wedge. I think we may be able. This is even a divergence. This may be able to bounce here actually. So I would keep an eye on Solana BTC to be honest with you. I think that doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna go quickly to the Binance one. I don't want to spend too much time on it because nobody really cares about this one. But you got the breakdown here. You got kind of a retest. You can see it's just respecting that 200 EMA very closely, right? And so you do have a divergence in place, so that's something that you need to consider. But overall, a good sign that Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin, Binance is weak towards Bitcoin. So we have this in play, but we also have this plunge protection right here, which is holding up strong. I think a divergence here. I think there's a good chance that we could see a short term rally here within the next couple of weeks. And honestly, all this goes into the Bitcoin dominance theory. Solana looks pretty decent. Binance Coin looks pretty decent. A lot of these coins are not looking too bad. Actually, let me look at Matic as well. There's a divergence on that. Excuse me. Um, what else are we going to look at? Let's look at Dogecoin. Not a divergence, but you got double bottom. You got this flagged. And so honestly, like a lot of these charts don't look terrible on the Bitcoin charts. And so that's something I want you guys to keep in mind. And even Ethereum has that support structure like so, so I don't want that to be lost in translation because that could be where you could gain some Bitcoin on that. With XRP, it's very complicated, but we are getting a consolidation, a longer one, going towards this 200 EMA. Let me zoom up to the monthly, and so kind of getting that. That's not exactly really good, but also XRP has a tendency just to flash pump, so keep that in mind, right? So another one. I'm just thinking. I usually got Phantom on my mind right now, so not exactly the best. Let's see if I can roll that down. I guess that one's not as good, but the other ones are looking pretty decent. So something to keep in mind. I think I think that might sneak up on people. So, and again, I still think, and we'll get into Bitcoin in a second, but I still think that the markets are better than people think. Okay, yes, we have a lot of stuff going on in the world, but the market has been holding up. Okay, and that's a good sign. And so Bitcoin is probably the best risk asset to have. And so we'll see it. We'll see how the Bitcoin looks here in a second. But I still believe that people are a little more fearful about crypto than they should be. I mean, the market's been up pretty significantly this year. And so yes, it could go down, but the fact that people want new lows, I think are a little exaggerated compared to what we've gotten. I mean, with all the news, Bitcoin's still up like, you know, 60% for the year. It's still doing pretty good. Anyway, we'll go to Bitcoin. Speaking of that, get into the rest of the video, and we'll just keep going. All right, on to Bitcoin for the weekly. We looked at that observation. So for Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, we did cover the weekly for the Monday video. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, but so far we have a pretty significant drop down. Um, very rarely do we get a candle like this where we have a big drop down and very little wicks. And so it has happened something like that, which tends to be more of a local top kind of thing. And so we'll see how that goes. It's not exactly inspiring, especially when that makes us break the RSI. Like this candle's really fumbling the ball for us for a lot of things. And I know there's conflict going on around the world and other aspects that we can consider. But overall, for the market, this is not exactly like this is the worst timing for this candle to take place. Now, that being said, we still have some hopium. We have retested this line. The consolidation is still here on the Aaron. So not all is lost necessarily. Sometimes the RSI can flip through the 50 and be okay. Typically not on this high time frame. It's typically very clean. You had one instance right here, I think. But overall, nothing honestly for the past 3 years. So you can't really bank on that. I think the 50 RSI is a really good rule of thumb on the weekly. And so that could be a sign to get out. Now, that being said, we are above the 200 EMA still. So that does um, add things into it. I'm going to check the SMA, and now we're also kind of smack dab in between that as well. That's not important, but I need to get rid of it. So overall, we're kind of wedged in between these two, and that could be playing out. So again, the market can explain this. It's very easy to explain. But the 50 RSI is, we had that very similar candle there when we had the breakdown of the low. So that could lead to some acceleration downward, unfortunately. So I want everybody to be aware of that. However, as long as it holds the 200, the problem is that I mean, we were above the 200 EMA on that one, but right here we're very significantly close to it. And so the point here is we are about 4, 3, maybe 4%. Let's just, let's just say 4%. So that to me, that's worth risking an extra 4% to hold my positions above the 200 EMA. We're just too close to that for me to ignore. So overall, that's kind of the weekly setup. That's nothing that we haven't shared in observations, but a little extra added context. For the daily, this is a 4-hour structure here that we have this line on. But overall, I'm going to get rid of that and look at this. We we did break above that. That was the breaker. We touched below the breaker, and now we're below it again. So if we close below this today, it's going to probably start accelerating some bearish price action, unfortunately. But that's just how it is. We had the bearish cross on here, the failure on the RSI. So we had a lot of things no longer in favor here. And overall, I kind of want to just look at this structure here. Your last line of defense is with this, and this is your high, this is your low. So the mid of that high and low is right here. So your last line of defense really is going to be 26,460, and it's about $200 lower than this, so not very high at all, not very wide of a gap. But this area is really where it's going to be in contention, and so this is pretty much the last frontier for Bitcoin to prop this up. And I know the DXY is bringing a lot of complication into that to see if that's going to focus on it too. Maybe we should just look at that DXY. So with that, we had a really significant push today for some reason. Very interesting. It's not really that's not the reaction you want to see when you have like I can already tell you because you got this right here. Like you don't want to see that kind of bounce. That's a sign that the dollar is still strong in this regard. You got the bounce roughly to the 50% marker on the RSI. So, sorry, that could be a sign that we might be heading downward a little bit, but Bitcoin's holding up relative to that, honestly. And I don't know what kind of percentage performance that is, about 1%. So overall, not exactly what you want to see. So best guess would be hopefully that breaks down, but we still have some ways to go on this as well. So anyway, little quick detour on Bitcoin. Not exactly inspiring, but on the 4 hour, this is kind of what we see here. We do have a divergence in place, so that's significant. Whenever you have a divergence that's set around the support structure, that's the what I'm interested in. Okay, a lot of people ignore divergences altogether. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and I understand that. But overall, when you get divergences with confluence, That's typically when they perform more so than other times. And when they're at support like this, um, that's pretty significant. So I would not be a surprise. I would not be surprised if we did not bounce here pretty soon. So anyway, that's Bitcoin on to Ethereum and down the line. All right, going on to Ethereum on the daily. I was interested in this swing low down here because of the liquidity block. We are touching that. We actually went below it and we're closing above it. I would like to see this close above, honestly, if, for us to gain any sort of traction whatsoever. And so that's something I'm looking forward to. Other than that, there's not a lot to talk about. Ethereum overall on the higher time frame has lost this level on the weekly. I had it drawn out. For some reason, it got taken away. But overall, you can see that we have failed that structure there. So that's not a good sign, regardless. I'm personally staying away from Ethereum for the time being because of that weekly failure. That's not what we want to see. Chances are we're not going to get, unless we get a big fake out, which we've had several times this year. I don't think Ethereum's going anywhere for the time being. All right, I'm going to zoom into the 4 hour. We do we do have a slight divergence here. I think that's something interesting to look at. And then again, you have the structure here. So you have kind of like a channel structure. And I admit it's not the best structure. But overall, let me see if I can make that look better. Marking up these lines. So lines are always better anyway for these things. So it's pretty channel-ish. When you switch it to candles, it looks a little more complex, but it's still within its lines. So when you get a channel like this and you get a divergence in play, typically that's when you want to start paying attention. Typically you want to probably close your short if you're in that position. If you want to get your maximum, I'm not saying that you can't follow through with that and go downwards, but typically channels don't typically fall down like continuously like this. So I would be cautionary. I mean, if they do, the divergence would become invalidated. So I would be cautionary with short right here. And so it's very possible this could be the bottom target. We could climb sorry, above there. Kind of stumbling on my words today. And maybe climb up above. I mean, we got maybe 4% to go, so that's possible to do with 3 days left in the market. I think, yeah, a little over 3 days in the market. I think that's perfectly plausible. So just something to keep in mind. So overall, again, that's why I'm saying the market doesn't look as bad. It does look bad, I agree, but a lot of the high time frame foundational things are still holding. So just keep that in mind overall. It's a hard time to trade, honestly. But now with this diversion in play, I would be looking for this to climb above the 1550 range. So Solana is next. All right, with Solana, we have a little bit of a red day, more so than the rest of them. Here on the weekly, I discussed that. I think the weekly still looks pretty good overall, considering all of this, but locally, not so good when we zoom into the daily. This is the structure I wanted to hold. It's currently failing. And so we can look at that. You got a big consolidation triangle here that I'm looking at. This was what I wanted to have to maintain strength, especially with the 200 EMA on that. We failed both of those. So we're kind of going back into the range. I mean, the next range below here is going to be $20.30 or 43 cents. I'm sorry. No, it's 30. No, the high is 43. Okay. So high of 43. So anywhere from the, 2016 to 2043. So that would be your next zone of defense, I guess. So with the 4 hour zooming in, you can see that we failed that. And we having a good wick here, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything if we can't reclaim it. We could also kind of stretch this out to the bottom zone here, and you can see that it is above that. So that's something to consider as far as this whole order block. This is holding. And so that's another thing. Like things look bad, but things are not looking terrible as far as liquidity and demand starting to increase just a little bit. And so we'll see where that goes. A lot of times when we get slow beats like we've had this year, it's because the demand is just slightly above the zones that it should be. And so that's why you get a slow bleed because people don't want to buy at an X amount higher. They want to wait a little bit lower and the demand isn't really slowing down either, but that's why you get that. So anyway, overall, not looking too bad. If this drops below, we're going to get to the upper $20 range. So or $20 and odd cents range. So that's Solana. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because that pretty much sums that one up as well. I think I'm going to skip a lot of these because I do these on the market updates for Discord. I think I'm going to continue to go down, and a lot of these I have already covered yesterday in the Discord. If you haven't joined, it's free to join. Free videos right now. So I think I'm going to cover some of these, maybe about 3 or 4, and then we'll end the video after that. All right, so for the altcoin section, one of them I'm interested in is Phantom. It's a coin that I've looked at for quite some time. I like it. It was doing really good. These are legacy trend lines. Long story short, I've got other videos talking about that, but overall, we had a reclaim. So we had a drop down, reclaim, drop down, reclaim, drop down again. So that's unfortunate. That being said, we could touch below here about the midway point, which is about 16.6. So that's a possibility. In addition to that, we could be stopping right here because we got 3 drives down with with a hold on pretty much all of these. I think I want to kind of go up a little bit, and we do have a divergence in play. That's kind of what I was looking for. So let me see if I can zoom even higher and see something. Not really. So worth a shot, but overall doesn't look too bad. I wonder if the 3-day will give us some added context as well. A little bit, not as much as I thought. So overall, we could be touching down here. That's worth keeping in mind. This isn't necessarily a divergence on this time frame, but on a higher time frame it is. So something to watch out for. We could see that. Nothing. We kind of got this weird way. I don't like the way this wedge is playing out right here, but overall, I do think Phantom is one to watch out for. It is growing a little bit. And it's got a lot of development relative to a lot of other coins. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. All right, so another one I want to look at is Cosmos, another coin that has a lot of activity. If you see a theme for this video as well, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at coins that have activity during the bear market. Cosmos is one of them. I have seen some people withdraw from the market, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. That was a position that definitely did not work out, but we're kind of approaching here for another attempt at the support structure. So it, depending on your viewpoint, this may or may not be bullish. I tend to prescribe to the idea is it may not be bullish in how it looks or it has been looking, but if it will bounce somewhere, it will bounce here. So that's the thing. A lot of people misinterpret, and I think I do a video on this, and I think I teach this in the academy as well, that being bullish and having bullish price action are two different things. When you want to buy something, you don't necessarily want to buy something because it is bullish or because it is bearish. You want to buy something because it will be bullish or bearish. See what I'm saying? Like you're looking for price to go into that direction, which is a post thought event. If I want to long today, that means I'm expecting price to go up tomorrow. See what I'm saying? If price went up yesterday, I shouldn't buy because of what has already happened. I want to buy because what I think will happen will match up with what I think will happen. Now, the reason people get confused is because sometimes when you buy something, it is good idea to buy that and have it continue to buy. And so that's the thing. People get confused because playing that perspective is different if you're playing a range versus if you're playing continuation. If you are playing continuation, you want to buy something that is going up and you want to sell when it's going down. Now in a range you want to do the opposite. And so that's what people get confused by, because bearish price action doesn't mean it will be bearish and vice versa. And so that's a little bit of a tidbit, a little Cliff Notes version of what I do mention in the academy. I mentioned really, I go through a whole week about stuff like that. Honestly, it's a really good program, and I've got that coming up later this year. So what we see here is yes, the price action is bearish from the past week or month, I guess, but it is approaching a support structure. You should not think at all that this is going to break. It can, It has a high probability of doing so as well because it's going to be touching for the third time. However, you can't think of it like that because it hasn't happened yet. So that's the trick on that. So overall, we can kind of see how that would operate. If we go on to the 4 hour structure, we do have a divergence in play. We have another three drives down, similar to Matic. Or yeah, I think it was Matic, right? Um, anyway, whatever coin I've did or just previously. So anyway, we have a divergence in play, so that's good. I would watch out for this one. This may bounce here as well, and if it does, you have a pretty significant trend line if it does. So I just feel like Atom is a good coin to watch, and a lot of these coincide with the fact that these could take several weeks to pan out, which we could get an increase to the Bitcoin dominance theory that I talked about earlier in the video, which means we could get an altcoin rally. I still think altcoins have a good option to have a 60-day run. I really do. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. That's Adam. Let's do a couple more. All right, I'm going to cover Fetch or FET. It's a coin that usually gets discussion only after it's pumped. It almost similar to how like XRP behaves. And it's really a shame because I think it could go somewhere, but we do need to discuss a few things on this. So, first things first, I want to mention that we have a liquidity block here, and that kind of matches up with this zone. We do have a kind of a trend line that's not really respecting it very well. So we kind of have like a descending. It's not a descending triangle because it's not respecting really any lines, but that's kind of the context of that. I think I'll just get rid of both of these as well because I think it's pretty much done with that. So fail the RSI, consolidation is bearish. So all that's playing out. But I do think that we could probably see another touch back to 18.6. I mean, we're at 20 cents, so it's not like that's a big deal. But I would look for a break of this move. I think FET in particular could be of interest because it could break down below this range, and that could be shortable, or break above this range, in that which case you want to kind of focus on some longs. Now, that's the weekly time frame. So this is kind of the daily. Nothing much is really changing except for just the time frame of that. So again, looking for maybe was it a touch here? So right at the top, right 18.8. That's basically where the top is of that. A break below that could mean it's shortable or sellable. Above that could be a long. So pretty simple, but I want to mention that because it does look more interesting than other ones. And there's a lot of coins that look like crap. So don't get me wrong. When I say altcoin season, I don't think that all altcoins are going to run. I think some are pretty much dead forever. But this one looks pretty good in particular. You can see, and when you have, by the way, when you have a coin like this that has a different pattern structure, that's a sign that people are actually interested in it. So for example, like I have some other ones like audios. It's a coin from last cycle downwards, downwards. RSI, Rune looks a little bit different, right? CRZ is pretty much downward. So a lot of these are going down or sideways. And like ENS, for example, that's pretty much dead probably. TWT is a little bit different. So a lot of, and the CTXC, which is an AI coin, it's going down as well. So there's some coins, even within FET's own niche, that are behaving like the rest of the market versus being a leader. And so that's a good sign for those coins that do behave differently. You should pay attention to those more so than the rest of the market because they have life of their own. They've got their own buyers and sellers, maybe even market makers, perhaps. So it's worth paying attention to those over the other ones. So let's do one more and I'll close it up. All right, last but certainly not least is Caspa. We get a lot of requests for this. So I kind of want to mention this I've been covering it more and more in Knowhere markets. I think it's the second week in a row too. So I want to cover this. Had the uptrend here, retest. I covered all that in previous videos. I had a long signal for that, went to target, and it came back down. So one of the reasons it came back down is of the divergence here. That's it's zoomed in too much to be valid, but it was on a higher time frame. So this was our structure. I mentioned that we got this high. If it broke above that high, then you could long, but it did not. That's called a Darvas box. The Darvas box did not play out as it's supposed to, and no long position was made. There was a trend line here instead. I figured it would break because the slope was too high. Caspa is very textbook compared to the other ones, and I think a lot of people are really missing out on Caspa versus other coins because it's a really good textbook analysis approach. And so now we went back to this zone. Um, this current candle isn't inspiring anything necessarily good, but we have this area right here. It needs to break above that in order to long. Otherwise, we're going to go back down to the 3.88 marker. So that's just something to keep in mind. We do have a bullish consolidation to be concerned about, so the longs are probably a little more favored into this, but it could also be susceptible to market conditions. So overall, Caspa doesn't look too bad. It's a trending coin. Like, I mean, shoot, if you guys look at it for the year, I mean, you guys, some of you guys are sleeping on this. This is went 800%, and a lot of you guys think the market's dead. You know, it's just like you just gotta know where to look. And Caspa's a pretty good coin. So anyway, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.